Now I'm going to begin a lesson today, a series of lessons on perfect peace. Perfect peace. The idea for this comes from Isaiah 26 and verses 1 through 6. So if you want to go ahead and turn over there, I'm going to read from that in just a little bit. But Isaiah 6:26 is where we'll be taking the lesson. But I want to begin by a way of introduction here, asking, have you heard any good news lately? It seems like you turn on the television, or you listen to some radio broadcasts, or you're on YouTube or Facebook, and people are just constantly sharing the bad news, and as if that is the only news that exists. Recently, I saw this video of a lady at home, and I tried to share it. I don't know if everybody got it. Sometimes you can't see it. It's on another platform, but it's a lady sitting at home, and she was explaining that someone needed to come and check on her because the difficulty she was having with her kids. She's like, someone needs to come and check on me. I'm at home, I'm doing my work, I'm on my computer, I'm setting up my virtual meetings, and then I hear this thump in the ceiling. And then in the background while she's talking, you hear her kids screaming. She's like, the story goes that one of the kids came down, she said, what was that thump? And they said, one of her daughters fell out of the swing. And she said, well, how could she fall out of the swing? The only swing we have is for the little kid in the bedroom. Well, what they decided to do was take a bed sheet and string it between the two beds and make a swing out of it, and then it collapsed on them and they fell on the floor. And over, the lady keeps saying, someone needs to come and check on us. Someone needs to come and check on us. I'm not kidding, people. She kept saying. It was hilarious watching this lady. But I think that's some of the attitude that people are having today, is they just don't have peace. And she's just trying to get her job done. And she's just being overwhelmed with what's taking place. So there's no peace in her life at this point in time. And so when we think about this COVID-19, and can you see anybody who's saying they're at peace with all of this, with the way their life has been turned upside down, with the things that they're not able to do? Do they find any peace? Well, the answer typically is no. I mean, some people say, "Oh, I'm better than less traffic. I'm wonderful with this whole thing." But typically, when we look at this idea of peace, the definition implies the absence or cessation of any type of turmoil. It's the absence of some type of conflict in your life. Yet, one writer stated this. He said, peace, or the individual is unknown, peace, it does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. And I thought that was a pretty powerful statement in explaining really what biblical peace is all about. The only thing that I thought was missing from it is explaining why you have peace in the midst of all of this. Just saying that you have peace is a wonderful statement in the midst of all this turmoil. I've used an illustration before of a young lady. It was a video that was put out years ago, a commercial. And in the commercial, I think it was life insurance or something to that effect. But in the commercial, the little girl, she's playing a piano, or it was a man or whatever. Somebody was playing a piano in this house that was burning down. And all around them, the house is burning, and the person just keeps playing the piano as if none of this bothered them. And the flame wasn't getting on them. None of it bothered them. As everything, was just falling apart, they just continued to play the sweet music and stay in this place. Well, the question is, if we look at peace being that which exists even in the midst of turmoil, why does it exist in the midst of turmoil? What causes that, right? Is it just because you just say, well, hey, everything's perfectly fine, I'm at peace because I say I am? Is that what it is? Is that really what sustains you in these times, because you just claim that you have peace? What calms our hearts? What is it that stills the worry, the aggravation, the fear. What is it that stills that so that we actually have peace in our life? Well, Isaiah 26 in verses 1 through 6 is a place for us to start. And it's just a place for us to start as a way of introduction. In the series of lessons, I'm going to explain just briefly today what this word, the statement perfect peace, what that means. And then in subsequent lessons, next week, how do we get it? And then how do we keep it, the third lesson. And the fourth lesson is an example of it. And so it's a broader topic than just one lesson. So in Isaiah 26, we read verses 1 through 6. Excuse me. In that day, this song will be sung in the land of Judah. We have a strong city. He sets up walls and ramparts for security. Open the gates that the righteous nation may enter, the one that remains faithful. The steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace, because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever. For in God the Lord we have an everlasting rock. For he has brought low those who dwell on high, the unassailable city. He lays it low. He lays it low to the ground. He cast it to the dust. The foot will trample it, the feet of the afflicted, the steps of the helpless. So Isaiah speaks of this perfect peace that exists even in the face of turmoil, even when there's difficulties taking place in our lives. And this is the point I want to make in our lesson this morning, and for us to remember. Trusting in God allows his perfect peace to reign in our lives at all times and in all situations. Again, trusting in God allows his perfect peace to reign in our lives at all times and in all situations. So in other words, we as people who have faith in God continually exist in a state of peace. It's not that we have to wait for things to get better out there for us to have peace in here. It exists no matter what is going on around us because of our faith in God. Now I know that some may blow that off and say, well, that's just wishful thinking. You can call it wishful thinking, but for Christians, it actually exists. You see, while people are going through times of panic, distress, being overburdened by their concern with what's going on, Christians don't. It's not as if we're blind to what's happening. We know what's going on. We see it. We know. We're even experiencing it. Christians are not impervious to job loss, financial struggles, marital difficulties. We're not impervious to that. Those same things affect our life as much as it does anybody's life. The idea of us social distancing or staying in your house and not getting out and doing what you used to do, we do that. But there's a different mindset and an attitude towards it. And that we don't rush headlong into trouble, but we also don't fear it. We have a mindset that God is in control. And I keep my faith in him. And no matter what may come my way, even if it be that I somehow catch COVID-19 and it actually ends up taking my life, I don't fear that because of my faith in God. And ultimately where that will end up. And our mates shouldn't fear that. Because if they know that your loved one, that you are a faithful member of God's family, that if by chance this affected you and you were to lose your life, they may have grief, they may have sorrow, as everybody would expect that to take place, but they would have encouragement and peace knowing that you are everlasting with the Father. Now, some may, as I said, look at that and just blow it off and say that's wishful thinking. But I'm telling you, in my life, And in the life of Christians, it's a reality. I'm not just wishfully thinking this. In fact, it is such a reality, I don't doubt it. You know, wishful thinking is something that you say, well, I really hope this happens, but it may not, and so you have doubts. I don't have doubts about my faith in God. And thus, His Word is actually real in my life because it's real. It's not make up, it's not just make believe, it's not just wishful, I hope. It is a reality. And so it has real effect on our lives. Real effect that we don't run around in panic, not freaking out. We have peace. Perfect peace. Because we trust in God and we allow His perfect peace to reign in our lives at all times and in all situations. So, what I want to do here is just introduce what this perfect peace is. Explain what it is. And then we'll move on to subsequent lessons in the following week. So this is a point I'm going to make this morning. Understanding perfect peace. So let me begin by expressing what it's not. What it's not, okay? Perfect peace is not the absence of strife as you often find in dictionaries. And I'm not, dictionary didn't use the word perfect or the expression perfect peace. They just use the word peace. But in the dictionary, one of the definitions you'll find, and often at the top, is an absence of conflict. So you're at peace because there's an absence of conflict. But it's not the absence of conflict. And how do I know that? Well, take a look over in Matthew chapter 10. According to the Word of God, Christians deal with strife. We deal with difficulties in our life, just like everybody else does. Maybe in different forms, different degrees, but we deal with strife. Again, we're not impervious to bad things happening in our lives. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 10 and verse 34, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I came to set a man against his father, and a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be the members of his own household." You see, at times, because an individual has chosen to follow the path of Christ, his enemies become his own family members. And the peace that used to exist, because all the family members were on that same path of whatever direction they were going, when this individual chooses a path of righteousness, then that individual becomes an enemy of his family, especially if you consider the Jewish family at the time that this was being stated and written. That for you to be a Hebrew and to break ranks with your family and choose to follow Jesus, you were an immediate enemy of your family. So just like in the world, you have somebody who may be considered the black sheep of the family because they're always off doing bad things, right? That's why they're the black sheep. It's because they're doing things that are adversely affecting them and their family, right? Bad reputation. I find it interesting that in the case of the Christian, you become the black sheep because you're doing the right thing, the good thing. You're actually trying to live a life of goodness and righteousness and faithfulness, gentleness and self-control, the fruit of the Spirit. You're trying to live that out. Nevertheless, you become an enemy of your family. Take a look over in Romans chapter 8 with me, verses 16 and 17. Romans chapter 8, 16 and 17. So, we're not impervious to conflict. Paul says the Spirit Himself testifies with our spirit that we are children of God. And if children, heirs also, heirs of God and fellow heirs with Christ, if indeed we suffer with Him, so that we may also be glorified with Him. Romans chapter 8, verses 16 and 17. So, we suffer for the cause of Christ. Sometimes with financial loss, sometimes with the loss of family, with the loss of friends. So, Christians have strife in their life. But Christians also have peace in their life, in the midst of this strife. In John chapter 14, take a look over there, Jesus, speaking to his apostles directly and the disciples, reminds them of what he is offering them. He says in verse 25, John 14:25, Gospel of John, "These things I have spoken to you while abiding with you. But the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all that I said to you." Now, he's speaking directly to the apostles there. But then listen to what he says. He says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Not as the world gives to you do I give to you. Do not let your heart be troubled, nor let it be fearful." So Jesus is telling his apostles and us as Christians that he is going to leave us with peace. Not like the world. Remember, the definition of peace for the world is absent of turmoil and conflict. As long as everything's going good in your life, you're at peace. But as soon as things come in and begin to disrupt it, it's not very peaceful. It's like the lady in the video. She wasn't at peace because her kids were making swings and falling to the floor and rattling the ceiling. But Jesus is telling his apostles and what they're going to face in their life. They're going to be martyred. They're going to be put to death. They're going to be dragged into prison. They're going to lose their possessions. 1 Peter, we've talked about this. The persecution that they face. Yet he says, "I leave with you my peace." Something that the world cannot offer you. Look in the Gospel of John again, 16 verse 33. Jesus says, "The things I have spoken to you," or these things I have spoken to you, "so that in me you may have peace. In the world you have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world." You see, there's tribulation. We're in the midst of it right now. We're in the midst of strife right now with COVID-19. Yet, we have the peace that Christ leaves us. A peace that there is a God. A peace that this God is the creator of this world and the entire universe and its existence. That he's an eternal God. That he's a loving God. That he's a compassionate God. That he's a God of comfort. That even though something may happen in our life that's difficult, and may even be something that leads to the ending of our life, he's still God. And he's still compassionate. And he's still loving. And he still sent us a Savior. We still have forgiveness of sins. We still have the hope of heaven. As well as all the blessings that he provides for us while we are here. So if you go back and look at the Christian life is not absent of strife, yet at the same time, peace exists within the hearts and minds of the Christians. The wording in Isaiah 26, going back to Isaiah 26, the wording in Isaiah 26 defines for us then what this peace is that Christ leaves with us. This perfect peace. Gives us a definition of it. So if you put yourself in the context of Isaiah, the nation of Israel is divided. The northern and southern kingdoms, they've split. The kingdom is split into two parts. Israel's gone off into captivity. Judah, Jerusalem, Judah's left. Jerusalem, the city, is under siege. They've been in conflict for many years. And so it doesn't seem as if peace exists. There's hunger, starvation. There's threat of death constantly. So there doesn't seem to be any peace in the lives of the people. In the Hebrew language, we have the statement in Isaiah, verse 3, 26:3, as perfect peace, right? It actually is the same word repeated twice. It's an idiom. The word is shalom. So in the Hebrew, it would read Shalom Shalom. And because we have that idiom, these words being combined together in that way, they emphasize something more deeply. It's like saying truly, truly, or verily, verily. It's like a parent who is calling out to you, and at first she says your name once, James. And because there's great danger, she repeats your name, James, James. Someone trying to get your attention, right? So a repetition of words at times can emphasize what's being said. In this case, that's what this idiom is. It is a repetition of the same word, emphasizing something deeper. That's why when the English translators translated it, they use the word perfect peace. Right? Rather than just saying peace, peace, we say, well, that's just saying peace twice. But because the translators want us to understand that Shalom Shalom has a deeper meaning than just peace, they put the word perfect in there. Perfect peace. This Shalom Shalom, in fact, emphasizes that it's all-embracing. That the peace that Isaiah is talking about is an all-embracing peace. It is an undisturbed well-being. An undisturbed well-being. Isaiah says it is a peace that exists because we trust in God. It is a perfect peace. It is an undisturbed peace. Not because there's no conflict, but because there's a God. And we are faithful to that God. Perfect peace will not be agitated by the trials in which an individual finds himself. Whether we be subject to persecution, poverty, sickness, want, bereavement, whatever it may be, that Shalom Shalom, that perfect peace is not disturbed. So when we go through things that we go through now, it doesn't disrupt that. Because it is our faith in God that sustains that peace. Amen. Go back over to Isaiah 26. That God is going to deliver us. He says in verse 3, the steadfast of mind you will keep in perfect peace because he trusts in you. Trust in the Lord forever. So it's the steadfast of mind. It's the person who doesn't give up on God. It's the one who doesn't waver in times of distress, tribulation. It's the individual who is steadfast in their faith. They understand that there may be horrible things happening in their lives, but that's not going to dissuade them from their faith in God. We're going to continue to trust in him. We're going to know that he is the creator. He's in control. And when he sees fit to do what he sees fit to do, he'll do it. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. And we just trust in that. We know that he's not a God who's seeking to bring us harm. He's not trying to hurt us in any way. But there are times that Christians go through difficulties because of external circumstances. Something we didn't even bring upon ourselves. People go through that. The difference is I have a peace that exists because of my faith in God. And that is a real thing. In the context of Isaiah 26 and verse 3, perfect peace is having confidence in the one who will deliver you when you're going through those trials. You see, I don't have confidence in the government. I don't care what side of the aisle you stand on. Those are just people. And they make mistakes. And we know that the most intelligent people aren't always in political office. So people sometimes make bad decisions. I don't put my trust in them to get me through this. I put my trust in God. Now, that doesn't mean we won't listen to the experts. It doesn't mean we're not going to listen to the advice. It doesn't mean we don't believe in science. If I didn't believe in science, I wouldn't go to a doctor. People say that thing that the other day. I said, people always talk about, oh, you Christians don't believe in science. I go to a doctor Do doctors practice a sense of science? Yes, they do. So what do you mean I don't believe in science? I guess the same scientists that don't agree with other scientists on issues also don't believe in science. Although they're scientists, and they don't agree with your scientists, because they don't agree, they must not believe in science while they're practicing science. That's amazing. But ultimately, I put my faith in God. I trust in Him. That's why I'm at peace. If I have to rely on the government to take care of me, forget that. I'm never going to have peace. It ebbs and flows. If not every 4 years, every 8. The presidency changes hands, the Congress changes hands. 1 year a law in effect, the next year it's not. Once it's okay to do it, now it's not. You want that's not peace. I put my faith in God. As Christians, we have that same kind of peace that Isaiah talks about. Let's go over to 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter chapter 4. Peter, as he's dealing with this tribulation that these Christians are mentioning, reminds them of this peace they're supposed to have in tribulation. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 14. He says, if you are reviled for the name of Christ, you are blessed because the Spirit of glory and God rests on you. Make sure that none of you suffers as a murderer or a thief or an evildoer or a troublesome meddler. But if anyone suffers as a Christian, he is not to be ashamed, but is to glorify God in this name. For it is time for judgment to begin with the household of God. And if it begins with us first, what will be the outcome for those who do not obey the gospel? And if it is with difficulty that the righteous is saved, what will become of the godless man and the sinner? Therefore, those also who suffer according to the will of God shall entrust their souls to a faithful Creator in doing what is right. Entrust our souls. Have faith in God. And he's writing to these Christians in their time of persecution, and he's telling them, have faith in God. Put your trust in Him. And if you put your trust in Him, then you'll have peace. The perfect peace, which Isaiah speaks of, is an inward peace. It's an outward peace. It's a peace with God. It's a peace of conscience. It's a peace at all times, under all events. It's a peace that we shall be put into and kept in the possession of God. The one whose mind is stayed upon God because it trusts in Him has that peace. So, since peace is not the absence of strife, how do we have peace in the midst of strife? Going back to that little statement I read earlier at the very beginning, how do you have peace? You have it, perfect peace, unabated peace, in God. Real peace, godly peace, perfect peace comes from our confidence that God can and will deliver us no matter what the situation. And because I know that, I don't live in turmoil. I don't allow it to control me. I realize it's there. I know what's going on. I understand the hardships that are affected because of it. But I'm still at peace. So as Christians, we can have peace in a world of strife by trusting in God. His perfect peace then will reign in our lives at all times and in all situations.